He smells like scorched pine, iron, and patience. He's an alpha you can't provoke. I tried. I baited him, poked, climbed right into his space. He just smiled. My name is Noah, and my job tonight is simple. Sit across from the enemy's envoy, and pretend my heartbeat isn't counting the seconds between his blinks. The council chamber is stone and shadow, old banners soaking up candle heat, the crests of our packs staring each other down across a table long enough to lay a dragon. Wax drips. The air rings, charged and thin, like the hush right before thunder. Cade sits opposite me, relaxed in a way that makes relaxation look like a weapon. He's a little older than I am, broad shoulders, a mouth made for not giving anything away, dark hair swept back as if the wind itself obeys him. His suit is unadorned, midnight black, the kind of cloth that drinks candlelight. The collar is open. No tie. Of course. Why would a predator wear a leash? I lean back in my chair and angle my body so I face him directly. Some people think an Omega's place at the council table is ceremonial. By some people I mean half the elders who would prefer I pour tea and smile, but I earned this chair with blood and wit, and I'm not going to warm it politely. Tonight, I get to watch the enemy's star diplomat breathe. Lucky me. Ambassador Cade, Elder Rowan begins, voice thin and formal. The terms your pack proposes. We read them, I cut in, smiling with my teeth. They're pretty. But pretty doesn't mean safe. Cade's gaze slides to me. Not fast, not startled, as if he had been watching me anyway, and only now chooses to let me know. Pine, iron, patience. It's not a perfume. It's a story told low and slow. The story of campfires and old blood, and a man who knows how to wait. It's always a pleasure to be critiqued by a poet, he says. His voice is smooth but not soft, a river with rocks under it. If there is a specific line you find unsafe, Noah, point it out. We'll sand the edges. Noah, not representative, not Omega. He rolls my name in his mouth like it's a familiar blade. Across the table, Lyra kicks my boot under cover of the tablecloth. She is supposed to be neutral ink and paper tonight. My friend, my colleague. A razor dressed as a clerk, but subtlety has never been her hobby. Don't start, her eyes say. Start, says my blood. The clause on border patrol rotations, I reply. You suggest joint patrols on the ridge by the frost line. That ridge is ours. It has been shared since before either of us were born, Cade says mildly. We propose formalizing what is already true. That smile again. Relaxed, patient. It is an infuriating smile. It makes me want to say something stupid just to hear it change. We both know formalizing means rebranding theft, I say. You're good with words, Ambassador. What do you call it when someone walks your fence line whistling? Lonely, Cade says. He doesn't look away from me when the elders shift in their chairs. But perhaps I've spent too much time in border towns. A few of our elders chuckle uncertainly. I don't. I feel the hairs on my arms rise, and I don't like that my body thinks this is interesting. Asher sits at my right with a ledger spread before him, pen poised. He's in his usual crisp gray, neat part in his hair, brows knit in that concentration he pulls up like a shield. He is excellent at looking like a perfect assistant, exactly the kind you don't notice, which means I make a point of noticing. He doesn't write down the part where Cade called me a poet. Scribbles something else instead. Probably the shape of my bad decisions. Let's keep to substance, says Elder Marin, her rings chiming against her goblet. Ambassador Cade, you've said your pack wants peace. My pack, Cade says carefully, wants to stop burying its sons. The room absorbs the sentence like bread soaking broth. Lyra stills. Even Asher pauses, his pen hovering. I could let the weight stand. It's a good line. It hits exactly where it should. To the ribs, to the graveyards lined with stones that don't care whose colors we wear. It's a line that makes you believe the envoy is a father and brother and not a blade with a human smile. I don't let it stand. And your pack wants access to our trade routes, lumber rights in our northern groves, and 2 votes on the joint council. I tick them off on my fingers. Forgive me if I struggle to picture that as grief counseling. Cade leans back. One finger starts tracing the lip of his goblet, the candlelight catches on the cut glass and jumps to his knuckle like a moth finding a star. The patience in his scent shifts, not more, not less, just closer, as if he set a chair in my chest and sat down. You remind me of a hawk, he says, the way they sit on a wire, pretending they are uninterested in the field. The pretense is the charm. Oh? I say sweetly. And you remind me of a fence post. Lyra coughs to hide a laugh. Cade's mouth tips, not enough to be called a smile, more like a curve he allows for his own amusement. Please, Elder Rowan says, pinching the bridge of his nose. Ambassador Cade, perhaps we might discuss alternatives to the Frostline patrols. Cade's attention returns to the elders. He obliges them with politics, offering a compromise that is not a compromise, and they obligingly pretend it is. I listen because that is my job. But I also track the rhythm of his breath, the shifts in temperature, the way sound carries in this room. A storm trying not to be a storm. Asher leans in. Noah, he whispers, so low the candles wouldn't dare listen. You're poking too hard. I haven't even used a fork, I murmur back. Seriously, he says, and there's something like nervous sweat under his cologne. Don't draw his eyes. Not like that. I don't say. His eyes were on me before I opened my mouth. Instead, I say, write down that he wants 2 votes on the Joint Council. In the first year, 1 thereafter, contingent on compliance metrics. Asher's pen scratches. And write down that he enjoys metaphors. His pen stops. Do I? Write the metaphors, I say, tapping the ledger without looking at him. They matter. Lyra's voice brushes my ear. You're grandstanding, she mutters, fond as a threat. And yes, it's very attractive, but some of us would like to leave this hall alive. You're overestimating my theatricality, I say. She snorts. I'm underestimating how much you like the sound of his voice. I don't kick her back. That would be childish. Also, she's wearing steel-toed boots because she's a menace. The talks unspool into specifics. Timelines, shipments, dispute mechanisms. Cade is good, not in the smarmy way of career bureaucrats who learn to smile before they learn to listen. He waits for the holes, then threads lines through them like a needle. When he does go still, it's not because he has nothing to say. It's because he is letting everyone else tell him who they are. His gaze returns to me at strange times. When someone mentions a patrol route I walked as a boy. When a trade concession brushes my pride. When the candles gutter and the air tastes like a coming blow. He doesn't look away when I catch him. He lets me see him, seeing me. If I were smarter, I'd ignore it. If I were nicer, I'd smile back and let it be a human moment in a room designed to erase those. I am neither tonight. So, I say, when Elder Marin produces a parchment with the draft's current bones, you, asking us to trust that when you walk the ridge with us you won't count our scouts. Cade inclines his head. I'm asking you to trust that if we do count them, we will count them as allies. And you expect me to swallow that? I expect you to taste it first. He lifts his goblet. Try the vintage. If it's sour, spit. The elders trade glances. Some of them are charmed. Some of them are disgusted by their own charm. It is a tedious dance, and I am better at knives. Ambassador, I say, what happens when your men get lonely on our side of the ridge and start humming lullabies to our border stones? Cade considers, and for the first time tonight the patience in his scent warms. He's amused. Lord help me. Then I hope, he says. Your stones are flattered. Lyra actually groans into her palm. Enough, Elder Rowan says. Which is not enough, but we'll have to do. We'll adjourn for an hour. Everyone stretch your legs. We'll reconvene with a revised draft. Chairs scrape. Rings clink. Voices gather themselves into knots. The banners hang and do not move. I stand, slow enough that it reads as confidence, not caution. Cade stands smoothly across from me, one hand flattening his jacket, and for a fractional second the room shortens, narrowing into a corridor made of us. He steps around the table toward the corridor doors. I step the same way because I refuse to be the one who yields space first. We meet in the mouth of the hallway, where the candles are fewer and the air smells like cool stone and the ghosts of arguments. Ambassador, I say, stopping with social distance between us and disrespect in my eyes. Noah. He returns, and it's infuriating that my name likes his mouth. Up close, the pine in his scent is sharper, the iron cleaner. Patient, yes, but there's a crack in it now, fine as spider silk, where heat lives. What would it take to burn it open? Do you always play this way? I ask. Soft voice, sharp terms. Do you always play this way? He counters. Sharp voice, soft eyes. I laugh, because the alternative is letting him have my silence. Tell your people the joint patrol clause won't pass without concessions on the southern mills. And tell your second, Garrick? Garrick, he corrects gently. With a K, tell him to stop glaring at me like he's cataloging my bones. It's rude. He's very proud of his catalog, Cade says. He would be hurt to know it was considered impolite. I'll send condolences. I shift, enough to let someone pass behind me in the narrow hall. The movement brings me a half-step closer to him. My pulse unhelpfully enjoys this. And your diplomat, the one with the jewelry and the pitying eyes? Mirael, he says. She doesn't pity. She calculates. Tell her that if she underestimates me again, I'll make a speech so long she'll age a decade. I would pay to see that, Cade says. Good. Pay in lumber rights. He smiles, actually smiles, and it's not the blade meant for the room. It's something warmer, edged still, but not for cutting. I'll see what I can do. I should move. I don't. The hallway thins again. I can hear Lyra's voice somewhere behind me, chastising a scribe for misquoting a clause. Asher's careful footsteps recede. He always walks like he hopes to disappear into sound. The candles gutter. Cade's gaze tips briefly to my mouth before returning to my eyes. So quick, I might have imagined it if my skin didn't keep such fervent accounts of heat. You're not like I expected, he says. You expected a teapot with opinions? I say. He considers. I expected a diplomat who mistook volume for weaponry. You mistake nothing. You don't know me, I say, because pride is a habit with me. Pride got me this chair, this voice, this stupid need to stand in doorways and make predators blink first. Not yet, he says. He says it like a promise. He says it like patience will always win. Ambassador, I say. And I make myself step back. I give the corridor back to the world. Go drink water. Your metaphors are getting thirsty. My metaphors are bottomless wells, he says dryly, moving past. He is close enough that his shoulder almost brushes mine, and the ghost of contact runs the length of my spine as if a match were struck there. But I will take your advice. He doesn't look back. He doesn't need to. The scent of pine lingers like a dare. Lyra materializes at my elbow with a folder and a look that could sand bark off a tree. What did I say about not poking sleeping bears? That he should poke himself to prove he's alive? I say brightly. She thunks the folder against my chest. Since you're alive, sign off on the revised shipping ladder. And stop doing the mouth thing. What mouth thing? The thing where you look like you want to argue and kiss someone in the same breath. I make a face. That's not a thing. It is absolutely a thing, she says. A dangerous, stupid thing. You're doing it at the enemy envoy. He's doing it first, I say, which is childish, and Lyra knows it. Also, she says, lowering her voice, Asher's been weird. He flubbed a line I fed him perfectly, and then pretended it was a new amendment. He's sweating like an apprentice. I glance across the chamber toward Asher, who is bent over the ledger with his head a little too close to the page. He hears everything and says nothing. Good qualities in a scribe, unbearable in a traitor. I'm not calling him that, not yet. But I know what sweat looks like when it isn't about heat. I'll talk to him, I say. Do it gently, Lyra says. He idolizes you. Everyone should have higher idols, I mutter. We return to the table when the hour is supposed to end, though in politics hours are elastic. Cade is already there, coat off now, sleeves rolled to his forearms like he intends to actually carry something heavy. He doesn't fidget. He He doesn't check a watch. He waits, made of patience and iron, and something I refuse to name. Asher takes his seat. He gives me a thin, eager smile. It's the smile of a man who wants to be told he did well and fears being told he did not. I squeeze his shoulder once, a concession to care and performance both. Ambassador, Elder Marin says, when all the bodies have found their places again, we have a revision. Cade nods. He listens. He agrees to some points, rejects others with that river voice. I keep my attention on the place where his hand rests on the table, still, flat, relaxed. I watch his knuckles when the elders mention the frost line again. I watch the pulse at his throat when Lyra slides a new figure across the wood. I am watching the wrong things. I know this. I do not stop. He looks up and catches me at it. This time, he doesn't look away. Representative Noah, he says suddenly, derailing Elder Rowan mid-sentence. Would your pack accept a trial period on the Ridge Clause if we surrendered Southern Mill access for the same duration? Rowan blinks. Ambassador, we were discussing… Terms are not wood, Cade says. They do not have to be cut in only one direction. I hate that it's a good line. I hate that it's a better offer than we expected this early. I hate that it makes me want to look at his mouth again. We would need enforcement language, I say. And an exit ramp if incidents exceed threshold. Of course, he says, as if I had asked whether water is wet. And a joint press statement. The world doesn't trust quiet agreements. The world is smarter than it looks, I say. Sometimes, he says. A pause. Then softer. Sometimes not. He is talking about war. He is talking about grief that eats the names off stones. He is talking about boys we both buried, and boys we might still save. He is talking about me. And I don't like it. I don't like that he sees the way I wrap humor around fear and call it armor. Fine, I say. Draft it. Asher's pen rushes to keep up. Lyra's smile flickers, triumph threaded with worry. Across from me, Cade's gaze rests on my hands for a beat, then finds my eyes again. It's not possession. It's not a game. Not anymore. It's attention offered like a cloak, weighty, warm, and dangerous to wear. When the session finally breaks, for real, this time no elastic hour left to pull, we rise. Again, and the chairs complain again, and the banners breathe only when the doors open. As I reach for the parchment to tuck it under my arm, Cade's voice reaches me low and without audience. Noah, I turn because I am made of bad decisions. Next time you try to provoke me, he says, and the corner of his mouth curves. Try harder. I grin before I can stop myself. Next time you try to be unprovocable, be better. He bows, unnecessary, elegant, and steps back into his world. His scent follows him like the wake of a ship. Lyra bumps my shoulder. You're enjoying this? I enjoy all doomed endeavors, I say. Good, she says lightly. Because tomorrow, you get to argue with 3 elders and a mountain. Ah, I say. At last. An even match. Asher hovers, looking pale and very helpful. Noah. Do you want me to file the joint statement draft now or wait until we confirm the… File it, I say. And Asher? He straightens, chest tight. Yes? Drink water, I tell him, and smile with my teeth. Your metaphors are getting thirsty. He laughs. Too high and too fast. Lyra's brows crease the way they do when she smells a storm. Cade is gone, but the room still rings like it remembers him. I tell myself that the ringing is just politics. I tell myself a lot of things. The banners don't answer. The candles gutter. And somewhere in the long corridor of hours ahead, a hinge begins to turn. Banquet halls are supposed to be places of ease. This one feels like a trap wrapped in linen. The table groans under roasted venison, buttered root vegetables, and heavy bread, the kind of feast meant to show wealth or lull enemies into thinking they're already allies. A small ensemble plays string music from the balcony, too polite to drown out the low grind of rival voices. Goblets flash, banners hang, laughter punctures the air like nervous stabs. I choose my seat carefully, closer to Cade than protocol strictly requires. Close enough that the pine and iron scent coils in my lungs. Close enough that the elders frown like I've committed a diplomatic crime. Close enough that Cade raises one brow but doesn't object. You're bold, Lyra murmurs from further down, her voice carrying only to me. Or suicidal. Boldness and suicide are cousins, I reply, reaching for wine. Cade notices. Of course he does. He's too practiced not to. He watches the pour as though noting how steady my hand is. When I glance up, he's already smiling. Patient again. Always patient. Ambassador, I say loudly enough that nearby ears twitch. Is it true your pack ages slower because of all the cold air in your mountains? Or is that just another story you tell to sound mythical? The alpha sets down his knife without hurry. Some myths grow because they are true, he says, leaning back. Some because people enjoy them. Which would you prefer me to be? A man who answers the question, I shoot back. A few snorts of laughter escape our side of the table. Cade doesn't flinch. He tilts his goblet, eyes never leaving mine. Too brave for an Omega, he says softly. Or too stubborn. My pulse skips, which annoys me. You'll have to decide which, I say, stabbing a potato. Before I can deliver a sharper jab, a voice colder than frost interrupts. Forgive me, says a woman 2 seats from Cade. Her hair is braided in a crown, her tunic lined with pale silver, rings glinting on every finger. But why is an Omega placed as a speaker at negotiations instead of, say, pouring the wine? One would think a host pack cared for appearances. Mirael, their diplomat. I'd heard the name before. It sounded like steel dressed as silk. I set my fork down deliberately, smiling with teeth. One would think a guest pack cared for manners. But appearances deceive, don't they? For instance, you appear clever. A ripple passes through the table, half shock, half delight. Muriel's jaw tightens, though her lips stay composed. Cade doesn't rush to rescue her. He just watches me, and I can't decide if that's support or entertainment. Another voice cuts through, low and rough as gravel. Careful, rumbles the broad man beside Cade. Garrick, his chief of security, if I remember correctly. His arms are thick enough to bend steel bars, his expression carved into permanent scowl. The pup has teeth, better teeth than fleas, I say pleasantly, sipping wine. Lyra coughs violently into her cup, pretending it's the drink. Muriel shoots Garrick a look that says, don't encourage him. Cade's mouth curves. There, finally, the spark in the smile. Dangerous, amused. Pup bites, Garrick mutters to Cade, unimpressed. Do we chain it, or let it run? Neither, Cade says without glancing away from me. Sometimes pups grow into wolves. Something tightens in my chest. I hate that it sounds like a compliment. I hate more that I want it to be. Before I can answer, someone nudges my elbow. I glance down. A smaller plate has appeared by my own, stacked with slices of venison. The culprit grins from Cade's other side. Younger, lighter build, eyes wide with unguarded admiration. Try this, the boy says. It's the best cut. They always serve it to honored guests. Elric, Cade warns, though his tone is more weary than sharp. I spear a piece and pop it into my mouth. Rich, tender, salted just right. I give the boy an approving nod. You're right. Maybe you should be the diplomat instead of your brother. Elric beams like I gave him a medal. I'd love to, but Garrick says I talk too much. You do, Garrick growls. Elric ignores him and pushes the plate closer to me. Eat more. You look like you argue better on a full stomach. The whole table hears that. The laughter is genuine this time, even from our side. Muriel's smile freezes. Garrick looks like he swallowed a knife. And Cade studies me with that patient gaze again, though this time it's warmed at the edges, as though his brother's enthusiasm amuses him against his will. I shrug. I do argue better on a full stomach. Elric beams harder. Muriel sighs into her goblet. Garrick mutters something about spoiled pups. And Cade? Cade rests his chin briefly on his hand, watching me like I've upset the balance of a game he was sure he controlled. So, Ambassador, I say, wiping my mouth, do all your negotiations involve feeding the opposition, or am I special? You're special, Cade says without pause. His voice doesn't waver, but the flicker of something sharper crosses his mouth. Not patience, not indifference. Something dangerous. The music swells, the wine flows. The elders talk themselves hoarse about clauses and timetables. But at my end of the table, where wolves weigh every word like a blade, the real negotiation happens in glances and quips, and the curve of a smile that threatens to bite. And for the first time tonight, Cade's patience doesn't look infinite. It looks tested. It looks like I'm getting exactly what I wanted. Later, people will swear the music warned us. They'll say the violins tightened before the blast, that the cellist dragged, a note like a throat closing, that the air itself tried to tell us to run. They'll say the candles guttered in unison. They'll say the banners breathed. I'll remember a different thing, Elric's grin as he slid another slice of venison onto my plate. Muriel's rings catching light as if hoarding it, Garrick. Stare ticking across exits and shadows, Lyra's pen tapping a pulse. On parchment, Asher's knuckles white around a goblet he hadn't touched. Then the world opened its ribs and screamed. The first concussion knocked breath out of the room. Sound hit like a wall, whump, and the floor bucked under my boots. Glass shattered, the balcony shrieked as the musicians went down in a spill of bowstrings and wood. Smoke punched into the air with the stink of burned oil. For a beat, the hall stood stunned, like a deer blinking in a sniper's scope. Then the second blast slammed us sideways. Chaos is always the same color, gray. Gray smoke, gray dust, gray confusion. But it smells different everywhere. Tonight it smelled like hot iron, char, singed hair, so close to Cade's pine and iron that my body lurched toward the wrong safety. Down, Garrick roared, and his voice turned men into reflexes. Wolves dove, tables overturned, platters went flying in a rain of bone and bread. Someone screamed, someone else stopped. I tried to track Lyra, left side, near the end of our delegation, then lost her in a coughing scrum. Asher vanished from my right. In the instant, the first goblet exploded, and when the second blast ripped a crack through the ceiling, stone dust hot and sudden peppering my face, I tasted blood and fear and rage. Lyra! I choked, and my shout went nowhere, swallowed by the metal clash snarl of blades coming free. Figures surged at the far doors, dark shapes with scarves pulled high, moving like men who knew the floor plan better than we did. Not a brawl, an incision. Guards, Elder Rowan wheezed. Shut the... The third blast didn't hit the hall. It hit the corridor just outside, smashing the double doors inward so they spat splinters. The shockwave rolled over us, guttering every candle it could reach. Darkness lunged. Smoke filled it. Hands grabbed my collar and yanked me out of my chair. I swung, pure habit, elbow first, short and mean, aiming for ribs. My strike met something like a wall. A forearm snapped up, blocked, and in the same motion hauled me closer until a body covered. Mine, shielding, moving, cutting through the sway of panicked bodies with rude efficiency. Heat pressed along my back. Pine and iron wrapped my head like a hood. Cade, move, he said in my ear, and the calm in his voice was a blade. We moved. Or rather, he moved and I hitched along, dragged by the fist locked in the back of my jacket. The room tilted into a maze of overturned benches and broken crockery. Wolves in our colors slammed into wolves in theirs, guards, not guests, and the air shrieked with metal kissing metal. I glimpsed Muriel's pale braid as she ducked under a table, shoving an elder ahead of her with surprisingly practical muscles. Garrick had a chair in one hand, a sword in the other, and an intruder on each. Lyra! I coughed again, trying to twist. Cade's grip only tightened. Where? I started. Later, he said. Breathe. I am breathing. Then you can argue. He barreled through the splintered doorway into a corridor, a foot deep in dust. Torches sputtered, half drowned in smoke. A dead sconce clanged on the stones where the third blast had torn it off the wall. People flooded the hall from both sides, our guards from the right, intruders. From the left, and in the middle the terrified and the stupid. We go left, I said, coughing. The infirmary. We go out, he said, already pulling me right. My heels skidded. There's a breach in the west wall. We don't go anywhere with you, I snapped, jerking free enough to plant my feet. What are you doing, Ambassador? Posing for a hostage sketch? I have a job. A knife skipped off the stone by my knee with a brittle tink. I went very still. Cade's hand closed around my wrist, too fast for pride. He didn't stop. Your job is being alive. My job is keeping my people alive. Then survive first, he said, and the words were so soft I almost missed the command in them. Shadows lunged. Cade moved me behind him so fast my teeth clicked as my jaw snapped shut. His other hand came up, and for the first time tonight I saw him fight with something other than words. No fancy flourish, no arrogant arcs, just clean, efficient violence. He caught the attacker's wrist, snapped the blade sideways into the stone, drove a knee into a thigh, and put the man down with a twist that made my shoulder ache in sympathy. The intruder gasped. Cade didn't wait to see if he would get up. He shoved me down the corridor, past a knot of our guards trying to form a line. Someone, one of ours, grabbed my sleeve. Representative Noah. I'm fine, I lied, eyes burning. Lyra, did you see? Council chamber. The guard coughed. We're clearing. Cade didn't break stride. He snarled a phrase in his language that sounded like broken river and steel. And three of his men peeled off a side passage, fell in behind us in a V. Tight, disciplined, predatory. They wore the envoy's colors, but their eyes were a different conversation. One glanced at me, and then away as if looking too long might start a war. Ambassador, one barked. East stairway's gone. West breach, Cade said. Now. Ambassador, I echoed with acid, stumbling when the floor jolted under a far explosion. In what world do you think? In this world, he said. And it wasn't the smooth envoy's voice. It was what lives under smooth, the thing that makes kings step aside. Move, Noah. I moved. Not because he ordered it. I hate being ordered. But because the corridor, behind us, coughed fire, and heat chased our backs like a feral thing. The west corridor opened into a service passage, low and mean, meant for carts and barrels. Smoke shoved itself into the space, turning it into a throat we had to crawl through. My eyes watered so hard the scene went salt and smear. Cade dragged me with his hand at my nape now, and if anyone else had done that, I would have broken a finger. But somehow his grip read as gravity, not leash. It's picking me up like a sack that I object to, I said, because terror makes me mouthy. If you wanted to make a point about dominance, I prefer debate. Later, he said again, voice rougher now. Breathe. I tried. The smoke tasted like failed promises. Somewhere behind us, someone sobbed a name. Somewhere ahead, someone yelled clear, and someone else answered go. We burst into a small courtyard cracked open to the winter night. The cold slapped my face like sanity. Beyond the courtyard wall, the city rose in black shapes and orange flicker, torches, fires. Life doing what it always does when death walks through a door, watching. Snow dusted the cobbles in mean little teeth. The breach in the west wall gaped like a missing molar. Down! A voice thundered, and an arrow hissed into stone where my head had just been. Cade swore, short, vicious, and yanked me sideways behind a toppled wagon. Is this where we have a calm discussion? I hissed. This is where we run, he said. On 3. 1. Absolutely not, I said, grabbing his sleeve. Lyra, Asher, your clerk was gone before the first blast landed, Cade said without looking. At me, eyes scanning the wall top like a predator solving a maze. Your friend is either out or in the keep. Either way, you won't help her by dying in the yard. My brain snagged on gone before the first blast. How would he? Later. 2. He said. Fine. I snapped, my heart trying to stomp up my throat. But if this is kidnapping, I'm sending you the bill. His mouth did the almost smile again. Even here. 3. We ran. Cold air burned my lungs. The yard became a blur of shapes and decisions. Over the wagon wheel, under the broken lintel, left. Around a stone planter flecked with blood that might as well have been berries in the snow. Wolves in gray met wolves in black, and I could not tell in the blur whether they were ours or theirs. At that moment we were third color entirely. Someone lunged for my arm and found Cade's shoulder instead. Cade flowed under. Inside, past. As if the yard had practiced for him. We hit the breach and the night beyond. And for a heartbeat I thought he meant to take me into the city's ribs, into alleys and rooftops, and the anonymous mercy of chaos. He didn't. He cut left, toward the envoy quarter. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted. "That's your territory. My mind is exactly where it should be," he said, not winded at all, "which I will resent forever. And so are you. Let go of me," I snapped, jerking, because my pride is terminal. "Gladly," he said. He let go. I stumbled and almost went down on the ice. A shadow flashed at my right. An intruder? No, one of his, hard-eyed bow already drawn. Garrick's silhouette loomed at the envoy gate, 2 men down around him, a third groaning at his boots. He took one look at me and made a sound like a disappointed boulder. "You brought the pup?" He barked. "I walked," I said through my teeth. "He was carried," Cade said blandly. "Open." The gates cracked, then swung. Envoy guards poured into the yard to cover our crossing. A clean line, shields up, faces set. Miriel materialized at the flank, soot streaking her cheekbone, braids singed at the ends. She gave me a look that could salt earth. "You brought him here?" she said to Cade, incredulous. "Yes," he said. "You can't." I did. "Are you collecting strays now?" "Only the dangerous ones." "I have a knife," I told her sweetly. "You can count me as a weapon." "Weapon?" Garrick snorted as he slammed the bar on the gates once we were through. "A yapping alarm." "An alarm that saved you 15 seconds of monologue," I said. "Enough," Cade said, and the courtyard of the envoy quarter silenced like a dog at a whistle. He turned to me. "Patient. Iron." The patience was cracked now, not by fear, but by force. A man who kept a mask on in a storm and chose to take it off once we reached the lee. "What are you doing?" I demanded, chest heaving. The cold bit my throat. The adrenaline made my fingers shake like hummingbird wings, and I locked them into fists to stop it. "What is this?" "You have your quarter. I have my people. You have a target between your shoulders and a traitor in your shadow," he said, too quietly for anyone else to hear. My heart threw itself at my ribs. He didn't wait for the question I couldn't shape. "And right now you have me. Is this where you say, 'I own you'?" I said, voice like broken glass. "Because if it is, I bite." He stepped closer until the winter air had to find a different room. His eyes were very, very clear. The pine in his scent was all winter now, alive and cutting. "This is where I say, I'm getting you out of the line of fire. With kidnapping? Rescue," he said, and when he smiled there was nothing polite in it. "Sometimes it's the same thing. You can't keep me," I said, trying to angle past him. Garrick shifted to block. 2 guards moved without being told. Miriel folded her arms like a gate. "Watch us," Garrick rumbled. "Don't bait him." Miriel snapped. "It's a bad night for sport." Cade didn't touch me. He didn't have to. He made a small gesture, and the envoy quarter moved around us, efficient as a machine. Doors opening, runners, dispatched, a physician hauled from his bed with a kit, fires stoked, blankets appearing like conjured fog. My breath finally found a rhythm that didn't feel like drowning. "Lyra." I tried again. "We'll send word," Cade said. "We'll trade word, but you don't step back into that hall tonight. You don't give me orders," I said, because if I didn't hold that line I would break somewhere softer. His gaze held mine, steady as a hand on the back of an anxious neck. "No," he said. "I give you options. This one keeps you alive." The gate thudded again under someone's fist from the other side. Distant, then nearer, then distant again. The city's noise changed, thinned. The attack was either over or moving. Snow found my lashes and stayed. Behind Cade, Elric popped up with an armful of blankets and a face full of soot. "You're okay," he blurted at me, awkward with relief. Good. Do you want tea, soup, both? Garrick says you'll complain either way. I'll complain in tears, I said weakly. Start with soup. Elric lit. Soup! He ran. Garrick grunted. Miriel muttered something about children. I stood there shaking and furious that I was shaking, and Cade stood like a wall the storm couldn't move. Ambassador, I said finally, exhausted of everything. What happens now? He didn't pretend it was simple. He didn't lie. He didn't preen. He just gave me the same expression he'd worn across the table earlier, stripped of diplomacy. I felt it land like a cloak. Now, Cade said. We hold the line. And me? I asked. Quiet. He didn't smile. His voice lowered until it was only for me. You stay behind mine. I wanted to argue. God, I wanted to tear the words off his tongue and throw them back at him. I wanted to tell him he didn't get to be my wall. I wanted to tell him walls become cages when you're not looking. Instead, I heard myself say, savage and shaking, if you make me regret this, I'll make you regret it louder. Fair, he said. He turned, called orders, moved men, carved a path through a night that still had teeth, and whether I liked it or not, my feet moved with his. Rescue. Kidnapping. Sometimes the same thing. Tonight the difference was a door, and a man who did not stop smiling in storms, until he did. The envoy quarter was only the throat. Beyond it, the fortress opened like a mouth that had learned to chew enemies slowly. Stone everywhere, old, patient stone, the kind laid by hands that expected to fight on it, and die on it, and come back as stories in it. Long banners climbed the walls, deep green edged in black, each worked with a sigil I didn't know. Antlers severed clean, a mountain cleft by a silver line, a wolf's head looking sideways. Braziers burned in iron baskets, throwing up resin smoke that clung to the rafters. The scent of Cade's pack lived in these halls. Pine, cold iron, leather oiled for weather. It pressed into my pores like a second skin I hadn't consented to wear. Eyes tracked me as we passed. Guards in slate gray, servants with soot-brushed sleeves, a courier with ink on his cheek. None of them hid the look. Interest, calculation, a touch of hunger. You bring your rival's mouthpiece into your house, and even the stones lean closer to hear him choke. Garrick met us in the great hall under a chandelier made of antlers and iron. He looked like a problem the mountain had been trying to solve for years, all scar and bulk and patience that had gone hard from use. You brought the enemy? He rumbled, loud enough to jolt the banners. His gaze cut to me and back, as if he couldn't decide whether I was amusing or a structural crack. You brought a problem to my floor? I walked, I said. Because apparently tonight I enjoyed sharpening my teeth on boulders. Garrick, Cade said, unruffled. This is Noah. I know who he is, Garrick said. I also know where he belongs. Not here. He angled his chin at the watching guards. You want to show spine to your elders? Fine. Not with my doors open. The great hall hushed. Miriel arrived like a blade being drawn. Rings, pale braid, a streak of smoke along one cheekbone she hadn't bothered to wipe. She took in the scene and narrowed her eyes just enough to count as a smile. He'll rot us from inside, she said, warm as frost. That's what pests do. They find the soft wood. I prefer hardwood, I said brightly. It polishes better. Elric burst in behind her, arms loaded with blankets he'd obviously bullied from some protesting storeman. He's here, he announced to no one in particular, face lit like a festival. Good. Are you warm? Do you need— oh, right, fire, food. You had soup, didn't you? Garrick says it was too salty. But Garrick says that about breathing. I say that about you, Garrick muttered, then jabbed a finger at Cade. This is a mistake. Cade didn't flare. He never flares. He took 3 unhurried steps into the center of the hall, the kind that made space behave. The guards straightened, as if a wire had been pulled. When he spoke, it wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Noah is under my protection. The words dropped like a bar across a gate. The hall heard them and adjusted. Muriel's brows lifted a fraction. Surprised, impressed, furious, I couldn't tell. Garrick's jaw worked against an answer his rank wouldn't permit. Elric exhaled triumph. as if the announcement had been a coronation. Me? My spine did a stupid thing. It eased. Then my pride shoved it upright again. Oh, delightful, I said, folding my arms. Nothing like being declared property in a foreign language. Cade's mouth notched. Protection is not ownership. Yes? I tilted my head. Because from this side of the collar it smells the same. You're safe here, he said. Safe and kept are cousins, I said, and I made it sound like an insult because it was the only way to keep the urge to lean into that safety from showing on my skin. Is there a water bowl too? Or did the servants forget your instructions? Cade's eyes sparked once. Not anger. Entertainment. A predator's interest when the prey looks back. Too spiny for a pet, he said, indulgent as a threat. Closer to a wild thing. I widened my smile to hide the pulse at my throat. Try a hand and lose fingers. Try me, Garrick said, apparently volunteering his digits. Try subtlety, Mirael advised him without looking away from me. It will be a new experience. Cade let them hiss. He was measuring more than mood, counting heads, scenting fear, weighing whether the fortress itself would spit me out. When he turned back to me, it was with the patience I was starting to understand, not a mask, a discipline. You can stand here and trade insults with my house, he said mildly, or you can walk with me and sleep in a room with a door I control. How reassuring, I said. The bars will be new, not bars. He tipped his head toward a side corridor that sloped up from the hall and into quieter light. Walls keep wolves out, Garrick said. Walls keep fear in, I said. Walls keep you from wandering, Miriel said. Elric juggled his blankets, desperate to fix something. We hung the green ones, he blurted to Cade, as if the color could tilt the night, not the scratchy brown. And I brought the tea with the honey root Noah liked. I think he liked. He ate like he liked. Did you like? I stared at him. Something around my ribs, tight since the blasts, loosened by a thread. Yes, I said. The soup was tolerable. Elric glowed. Cade started toward the corridor without checking whether I followed. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't order my feet. He simply set a pace as if gravity agreed with him. I considered refusing. I pictured taking my chances in a hall full of wolves, whose patience was thinner than his. I pictured Lyra, somewhere in the other wing or out or not, and Asher's white knuckles around a goblet he hadn't drunk. Survival isn't pretty. It's an arithmetic done with bad numbers. I followed. We climbed a narrow stair and passed beneath an archway carved with slow wolves and fast rivers. The corridor beyond was quieter, the air cooler, the floor runner thick enough to mute bootsteps. Taper candles burned in shelves cut into the stone, small circles of light unbothered by the draft. I felt the looks even here, less obvious, more controlled. Servants who knew their business still let their gazes tick toward my throat. Guards at a post didn't move, but their fingers flexed on the hafts of their spears when I passed, as if compelling themselves to pretend indifference. What am I in your story? I wanted to ask. A trophy? A bomb? A message in a mouth you're forcing yourself not to open? In mine, I was a match someone else kept striking, waiting to see if I would take. Cade stopped at a door banded with iron and opened it himself. Inside, a long room with a hearth at one end, and a bed big enough to fit an argument. A table already laid for food I couldn't taste. Another banner on the wall, green, the same antlers and iron. A narrow slit window gave a slice of night and a bite of wind. Temporary, he said, as if the room were apologizing to me. Until the council stops behaving like startled geese. Geese are honest, I said, stepping over the threshold because I refused to flinch from comfort. They hiss when you deserve it. So do you, he said. Elric shouldered in behind us with an armful of green, promptly tripped over the threshold, and saved the blankets with the kind of heroic flail that should earn ballads. I'm fine, he announced to the room, cheeks pinking. The blankets are fine. The tea is... Oh, I forgot the tea. Garrick filled the doorway like a warning. He doesn't need tea. Everyone needs tea, Elric said, indignant. Mirael slid past them both and performed a neat inventory of my probable escape routes without moving her head. The window is unhelpful, she observed. The drop is not survivable. The corridor is guarded, and Garrick sleeps in a chair when he's angry. I sleep everywhere, Garrick said. I wandered to the hearth because my hands were shaking, and I needed a reason to hold them near something warm. The fire smelled like cedar and something sweeter. Resin, maybe, or the candle drips collected from the hall. Over the mantel, an iron hook held a kettle already beginning to mutter. You prepared, I said. Confident, aren't we? Prepared is not the same as confident, Cade said. He came to stand a little behind me, not close enough to crowd, close enough to be a line I could put my back to if I chose. Prepared is the last thing you are before you discover you were wrong. That's supposed to make me feel better? I kept my gaze on the flames. No, he said, gentle as a bruise. It's supposed to keep you alive. Muriel prowled the room's perimeter with her eyes, the way cats learn houses. If the elders hear about this before we write the story, they will choose one for us. It will not be flattering. Write faster, Garrick said. I always do, she said. Elric had found his balance, and was now earnestness given legs. He started to spread the blankets on the bed, fumbled them into a hopeless knot, and then pretended that had been his plan. There, he said proudly. More layers. Layers are safety. Garrick taught me that. Garrick looked pained. I taught you to wear boots. You said boots are layers for feet, Elric said. I almost laughed. It startled in my chest and didn't get out, the room too full of worrying to let it change key. Cade's attention brushed my profile. I felt it the way one feels being watched by weather. You'll sleep, he said. You'll eat. You'll not step out without one of mine. Oh good, I said. Chaperones. I was terrified of freedom. Freedom is a door, Muriel murmured. It's also a cliff. Poetry, I said. Did you rehearse that on your way up the stairs, or does it come standard with the jewelry? She smiled without humor. I don't rehearse for pups. Good, Garrick said. He bites. Everyone keeps saying that, I said, turning from the fire to face them. Is there a reason your vocabulary is stuck on canine metaphors, or is it the banners? Very wolf-forward, love the decapitated antlers. Is there a story there? Did you kill diplomacy with those too? The silence stretched, offense fighting with amusement, tradition jostling, with the relief of something as simple as banter after blood. Elric looked scandalized and delighted. Muriel looked offended on principle. Garrick looked like he'd be happy to solve the mouth problem with his fist. Cade looked entertained. There it was again, that knot smile, edged and warm, like a knife you heat in the fire before cutting. You should sleep, he said. I should find Lyra, I said. And Asher. We sent runners, he said. We'll know by morning. If they're dead by morning, your runners will bring nice verbs to bury them with. Cade's gaze didn't flinch. If they're dead, we'll carry their names. And war. Of course, I said, throat tight. War solves everything. It solves some things, Muriel said coldly. It makes the rest quieter, or it makes it louder, Elric said, surprising me. Sometimes it's so loud you can't hear yourself think. Cade's hand flexed at his side once, brief and private. Eat, he said softly. Noah. My name in his mouth again, low and even. The first time since the blast that it didn't sound like a command. It sounded like a tether thrown at someone in deep water. I hate tethers. I hate needing them more. I sat because pride is not protein. Elric brightened and began laying out plates with the gravity of a coronation. Garrick took up a post just outside the door, as promised. Muriel pretended to linger over some figures at the table, but really watched me eat, tracking what a threat chooses when everything tastes like ash. Cade poured water, not wine, and his hands were steady. Mine weren't. The room was wrong, and warm, and too full of enemies trying not to be people. I measured it in breaths. I measured myself in what I didn't say. I have always been good at holding the line between my tongue and my fear. The fortress pressed in with its strange smells and stranger kindnesses. They looked at me like a prize in a case and a bomb on a shelf, a story that could be polished and paraded or detonated at a council meeting. I felt the shape of it under my skin, the thing I was here. Not a diplomat, Not even a hostage. A lever. Put me against the right fulcrum and the room would tilt. I have been a lever before. It leaves calluses you can't see. Elric eventually lost his battle with stillness and perched at the end of the table, feet not quite touching the floor. Is it true, he said in a rush, that your pack carved songs into the trees up north? I read it in a book that Garrick says is trash, but it felt true. It's true, I said, because the world had earned one honest thing tonight. We cut our mourning into bark where the sap could hold it, so the forest would remember what we wanted to forget. Oh, Elric said, eyes wide. That's beautiful. It's heavy, I said. There's a difference. Muriel's gaze softened a fraction. Garrick grunted. Cade's attention stayed on me, steady as winter. When the food had cooled and my hands had steadied and the fire had subsided to a red-bellied purr, Cade set a cup down in front of me. Not wine. Tea, dark and clean, sweetened with something that tasted like the root Elric had bragged about. You're not safe because you're mine, he said, quiet, in the way of things people say when the room is pretending not to listen. You're safe because I refuse to let anyone make a story out of you that you didn't write. I looked at him over the cup's rim. And what if I write one you don't like? Then I'll argue, he said. You like arguing. My mouth betrayed me. It smiled. Just a little. I do. He nodded toward the bed. Toward the 100 decisions waiting for dawn. Sleep, Noah. Order or option? Option, he said, and the patience in his scent loosened, just enough to be human. I'm tired of orders. I should have told him I wasn't tired of fighting. I should have made one more joke, flung one more barb, built one more inch of fence. Instead, I drank the tea and let the heat go to the parts of me that were still shaking, and I said, if you hear me trying the window, don't laugh. I don't laugh, Garrick called from the hall. He doesn't laugh well, Muriel corrected. I laugh fine, Elric said. I'll laugh for all of us. Perfect, I said. A chorus. Cade stood, not as dismissal but as promise. I'll be at the door between you and anything with teeth. I hated that my body believed him faster than my mind. I hated that the fortress's strange kindnesses were working their way under my skin, even as the looks stuck there like burrs. They watched me like a trophy and a threat, and a rumor that might be true. I lay down in a bed that wasn't mine, under a banner that didn't love me, in a house that could decide what I meant by mourning. I stared at the ceiling where the firelight wrote and unwrote stories in orange script, and I told myself very quietly that walls are only cages if you forget where the door is. Then I closed my eyes in the enemy's house and listened to the strange rhythm of a fortress breathing, and somewhere past the crackle of cedar and the murmur of guards and the soft shh of Elric's too excited whisper, I found a thread of sleep and held it like a truce. The council chamber in Cade's fortress was built to remind anyone who entered that words could weigh as much as steel. A circle of stone benches tiered the walls, rising like a coliseum. In the center, a fire pit smoked with resin logs, the scent sharp enough to sting my eyes. Wolves ringed the chamber, elders with hair gone silver, warriors in dark leathers with their blades still belted, advisors with parchment and quills ready to pin the night into history, and me, the wrong flag in the middle of their floor. Cade stood beside me, sleeves rolled to his forearms, hands loose behind his back. Garrick hovered like a wall at his shoulder. Muriel glittered further down, every ring on her fingers whispering disapproval. Elric was not allowed in, thank the gods, but I suspected he was pressed against the door anyway, listening. The first elder spoke in a gravel voice. You brought an enemy Omega into our heart, into this room. Do you want us gutted from the inside? Not yet, Garrick muttered, loud enough to echo. Cade didn't rise to it. His calm was the sort that bled into silence, filling it until no one knew if they'd volunteered for it. I brought him because he is not our enemy, he said. That set the room alight. Voices flared, growls undercutting words, boots shifting on stone. Someone spat. Another snarled about southern spies. And then a voice I hadn't heard yet, smooth as oiled steel. Or perhaps, you brought him because you lost your patience with prudence. Salus. He stepped from the benches like a shadow already cast. Older than Cade by a few years, with hair dark as coal, and a scar kissing the line of his jaw. His presence was heavy, an alpha's weight pressed into the room like a thumbprint. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "You risk the pack," Salas said, eyes cutting to me and back again. "For what? A trophy? A trinket with teeth?" "Trophies hang on walls," Cade said. Noah stands beside me. "I see an Omega from the enemy delegation," Salas countered. "And I see a breach in our defenses the size of your pride." He turned to the elders. "We should send him back in chains, or put him in the ground and salt it." The pit smoke clawed my throat. I coughed, loud enough to draw every head, which was maybe stupid, but then, I've always excelled at the stupid sort of brave. "If you're going to salt the ground," I said, "at least plant something useful in it first. Otherwise, it's just a waste of good salt." The ripple through the chamber wasn't just shock. Some of them actually laughed. Quick, short barks, like wolves startled into admitting amusement. Even Garrick's mouth twitched before he remembered himself. Salas's gaze snapped to me, sharp as claws. "You dare?" "I dare because you're talking about me as if I'm furniture," I said. "And I've got better lines than the chairs." "Noah," Cade warned quietly. But I was already committed. "You think dragging me back in chains will make your walls thicker? Your walls fell last night. Not because of me. Not because of Cade, but because someone planned it. Someone who knew where to strike." That earned me silence. Heavy, thinking silence. I let it hang a second, then added, "Sweeter. If I were the rot, would I be standing here? Or would your fortress already be ash?" Mirael's eyes narrowed. She didn't leap in, too clever for that, but her fingers twisted one ring, a nervous tell for anyone watching close. The elders muttered among themselves. One coughed about audacity. Another murmured logic, perhaps. The chamber shifted like a beast uncomfortable in its own hide. Cade chose that moment to step forward, his hand brushing the back of my shoulder. A gesture so small it might have been accidental, but the room noticed. His voice was steady iron. "If you lay a hand on him," he said, "you lay a hand on me. And if you lay a hand on me, you declare war." No shouting, no growl, just fact. The chamber froze under it. Salas's mouth curved, mocking, bitter. "So that's it. You stake your honor on this?" He flicked his eyes to me like I was a coin. A foreign mouth too quick for its own good? Cade's gaze didn't waver. On him, yes. On me, yes. On the truth, that last night's attack didn't come from his pack, but from rot within our own. The smoke curled in my chest again. Rot within. My mind replayed the banquet, the panic, the gap where Asher should have been. His pale face, his too steady pen, the way he'd vanished before the first blast had landed. I didn't speak it out loud, yet. Not here. Not with 100 ears waiting to rip it apart. But suspicion sat cold in my gut, and every time I pictured Asher's nervous smile, it felt more like teeth. The council session dragged, accusations looping, voices rising and falling like waves beating stone. Through it all, Cade kept me beside him, never once moving his hand away from my shoulder. Not heavy, not claiming, just there, like a line no one else was permitted to cross. And for the first time since the world broke, I realized the wolves weren't just calculating me. They were calculating us. Mirael's rings clicked softly as she folded her hands. Her eyes were knives. She would bide her time. Salas spat something about Cade's pride again, but the elders adjourned without reaching his demand. No chains, no salted ground, not tonight. When the chamber finally emptied, and only the smoke and the stone remained, I exhaled like I'd been holding the air for hours. "Enjoyed your performance?" Cade asked quietly. "I didn't perform," I said. "Enjoyed your performance?" Cade asked quietly. "I didn't perform," I said. I told them the truth. "And I'm better looking than your chairs." That got me the curve of his mouth again. The spark, dangerous and amused. And me? My suspicion of Asher only sharpened. If the fortress held rot, I needed to find it before it decided my name was the one worth salting. Cade's rooms are quieter than the fortress, which is suspicious in itself. The walls drink sound. The rugs are thick enough to forgive footsteps. The candles glow like they've been told not to startle anyone. A desk sits by the narrow window slit, papers arranged with military neatness, a map pinned under a smooth stone the color of riverbed. The bed, don't look at the bed, is too large, the kind that remembers the shape of decisions. I wait until the last footfall fades from the corridor and the lock sounds once. Soft, ceremonial, not actually engaged. Garrick's chair creaks outside, offended by the concept of joints. Somewhere beyond, the fortress breathes in its sleep. I count to 100, then to 100 again. My hands don't shake anymore. They hum. The window slit is honest about its contempt for escape. A knifed line of night, wide enough for wind, too narrow for wolves. I still test the stone with my fingers, feeling for the loose secret everyone forgets to check. Nothing. The mortar is smooth from centuries of failed ideas. I test the grate over the small vent near the hearth. The screws laugh at me. I test the door. Of course I test the door. And it opens an inch before a body fills the gap like the concept of no. Bored already? Cade asks. Voice low enough not to trip over the silence. I let go of the latch as if it bit me and arch a brow. Your hallways are very scenic. I thought I'd take them for a walk. He steps inside and closes the door with his heel, not touching me. Not even close. And somehow the room rearranges around that restraint. He's taken off his jacket, his sleeves are rolled. The pine in his scent is less winter now. More firewood, warm, lived in, a patience that has sat down. Candlelight puts knives into his cheekbones and gentles his mouth. Garrick will pretend to sleep, he says, then scowl the instant your hand touches the handle. I noticed, I say. His scowl fogged the corridor. His scowl has its own weather system. He doesn't smile, but it's there. The private shift I'm learning to read. He crosses the room and sets a folder on the desk. Notes from the council, I assume. Or soldiers' positions. Or the names of every exit I've already checked. When he turns back, he doesn't come closer. He just looks. Try again, he says. I blink. Excuse me? Escape, he says, as if it were a board game. Try it again. You'll sleep better once you've proven the door says no. I don't need your permission to refuse your hospitality. No, he agrees. You need my door. I hate that my mouth wants to curl. And your metaphors. Bottomless wells, he says, deadpan. We stand 5 paces apart, the space between us seated with all the things we didn't say at the council and the yard and the hall with the antler chandelier. It's strange how quiet honesty is when it first puts on boots. I go for the door again because even stubbornness needs exercise. I ease it open. The corridor stretches in both directions, candle cups steady in their niches. Garrick sits to the right, slumped like a boulder that fell asleep. One palm, open over his belly, the other near the hilt of a blade, eyelids idle. Until my foot crosses the threshold, then the eyelids remove the joke and the scowl comes online. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The scowl says, "You're not a storm tonight, you're a draft." I let the door drift shut. Content? Cade asks. Not even a little, I say, turning to him. But thank you for the demonstration. You're welcome. Do you rehearse being infuriating? I ask lightly. Or is it a natural talent? Nurture, he says. Garrick tutored me. The candles gutter in a draft and recover. The room gives us back our breaths, as if they belong here. Later, I will ask myself when I started measuring safety against this. A door I can open an inch, a guard I can name, a man whose patience has weight. For now, the ache of not knowing about Lyra and the stain of suspicion around Asher keep the rope taut inside my chest. I won't stay, I tell him, before the quiet works its charm. Not because you say it's safe, not because you say it's smart. You don't get to decide my survival for me. His expression doesn't change except in the eyes. The knife light there softens a degree. I didn't ask you to. I stop, annoyed by the way the argument slides against his calm and loses its edge. You close the gates behind me. I close the gates behind an attack, he says. You happen to be inside them. Convenient. Useful, he corrects. Convenience is the poor cousin of usefulness. I thought boldness was the cousin of suicide. That too, I fold my arms because I don't know what else to do with them. You think I'm going to stay because you're an alpha? No, he says, and the answer lands between us like a stone dropped into a still pool, clean, absolute. I think you'll stay because you know. Here, you live. The line walks through me without asking permission. It leaves prints. Don't do that, I say, throat tight. Tell the truth? Dress it like a vow. He takes a breath. Slow. Noah, I am not your pledge, I say, suddenly angrier than the room deserves. I am not your ornament, your rescued trophy, your cliff to stand on for a better view. I am not leverage you tuck in a pocket and pat for luck. His gaze doesn't flinch. No, I am a problem, I say. And I solve myself. Yes, yes, I echo, thrown by the absence of a hand I meant to slap. He steps closer by one pace. The air pays attention. I don't want you because you're solved, he says. I want you because you're solving. There goes my heartbeat. I would like to file a complaint. And if I decide solving means leaving, I ask, then I'll argue, he says, almost gently. You like arguing? I huff, unwilling to give that the laughter it wants. I retreat a step, find the edge of the desk against my hip, and lean. The map under the river stone is our border country, lines I know with my boots and bones. Frostline Ridge is a pale scar, the mill's a cluster of teeth. I set my fingertips on the stone. It is cold, anchoring. My hands do not shake. Your rival wants me in the ground, I say. Silas wants me smaller, he says. You are a convenient shovel or a convenient excuse, depending on the hour. Charming, Cade says. With people who agree to be charmed. And Muriel? He exhales like he's been waiting to use the air for this. Muriel wants the pack to outlive us. She'll cut everyone, including me, to obtain that outcome. But she will not cut poorly. She has a craftsman's pride. And Garrick wants to be alive when we win, he says, almost smiling. And for my brother to sleep 8 hours in a row. He thinks both are fantasies. Elric wants me to eat, I say, and the corner of his mouth finally tips. I look away to ruin the satisfaction that gives me. The candles are steady now. The fire mutters. It feels like the room is leaning forward. He moves closer by another pace. Now the space between us is a question. I can smell the warmth under the pine, the clean iron under the cloth. He plants his hands on the desk a foot to either side of my hips, not touching, not caging, bracing himself. To the furniture, as if the imperative to come closer has to be anchored to something that isn't me. Do you want me to step back? He asks. It is so unfair that he asks. No, I say, because my mouth is a traitor to my pride. Yes, I don't. Shut up. I didn't say anything. Be quiet more loudly. I feel his breath, not his body. My pulse finds my throat and informs it of a new career as a drum. I keep thinking about the hall, he says softly. How you stood in the middle of the wolves and bared your teeth like you were born in our colors. I keep thinking about the yard, how you made jokes when the air was knives. I keep thinking about the table tonight, the way you picked fights with my people as if you were polishing us, and they let you, and it worked. Oh, I say, very intelligent. You're complimenting me at close range. Bold strategy. The truth, he says again, as if it's a flavor he wants to share. Don't, I manage. And I'm not sure whether I mean don't stop or don't do this to my knees. He shifts a fraction closer, and the fraction is the exact size of the inch I let the door open earlier. My hands find the desk's edge, like they're discovering gravity. You ask me not to decide your survival for you, he says. I won't. Decide it, Noah. Choose it. Choose here for as long as here is the safest version of you, and when it isn't, I will open the door. I tilt my head up before I realize I'm doing it. You expect me to believe that. I expect you to test it, he says. Repeatedly, I echo. And somehow the word goes hot. You want me, safe and alive and arguing. Here, yes. The silence after that yes is an animal. It prowls the small distance, noses the paper edges, writes its tail across my skin. His nose is almost even with mine. If I breathe deeper, I will be exhaling into his mouth. I can see the small scar cutting the arch of his eyebrow, where patience once lost a fight with a branch or a blade. I wonder how long it has been since he stood this close to anything that could say no. Cade, I say, because if I say his name it belongs to the room, not to me, and maybe the room will be kinder. If you kiss me now, I will make your council meetings impossible. I assumed, he says, very grave. You already planned to. The door explodes open. Elric enters carrying a tray like a trophy. The smell of something savory rides in before his words. Soup. Cade doesn't move. I don't move. The tray stops in midair as Elric's brain catches up with his eyes. His mouth shapes a silent O the size of a lake. Behind him, Garrick runs his scowl through a heavier grade of sandpaper, and Muriel's voice floats from the corridor. Do not. Elric takes a heroic sidestep and sets the tray on the nearest surface with the care of a priest placing an offering on an altar. I brought food, he announces to the ceiling, soup, and bread, and also the honey root tea, because Noah likes it. Silence stretches. I hear Cade inhale, then let it out with the same discipline he uses for not starting wars by accident. Thank you, he tells his brother, level, perfect timing. Elric squints, trying to determine whether that was sarcasm. He decides to accept it as praise. Yes. He clears his throat. You two were talking. We were, I say, stepping sideways out of the gravity well and pretending my knees didn't sign a petition, very loudly, about doors, and freedom, and soup. Soup is freedom, Elric says, relieved to have found a topic where nobody bleeds. He thrusts a bowl toward me with a flourish. Eat. I take it because, if I don't, he will upgrade to spoon-feeding, and then Garrick will simply pass away. The steam fogs my face, mercifully. I blow over the surface as if cooling stock is the only reason my breaths are uneven. Your brother is milder than you, I tell Cade, aiming for light and landing somewhere near recovering dignity. I think I like him better. Cade's gaze flickers. Something wicked under winter. You've never provoked him, he says dryly. He's terrifying when offended. Elric brightens. I am. No. Garrick grunts from the doorway. Yes. Cade and I say together. Elric glows again. Soup safely delivered, crisis transmuted into a story he will tell himself before sleep. He fusses with the tray, finds the honey root tea, and pours it like he invented gravity. Muriel leans in the threshold, cool and cutting, eyes as sharp as ever. But there is the smallest, most unwilling ghost of relief at the corner of her mouth. I sip the soup. It is too salty and perfect. The candles steady. The room relearns its shape. The almost we were building curls itself into later and purrs, patient as a cat. Cade moves to the other side of the desk and begins annotating a map like he didn't just catch fire and decide not to burn. I eat. I breathe. I live. For tonight, that is the argument won. The hidden library isn't hidden because of secret doors or clever illusions. It's hidden because no one sane wants to climb that many stairs. Up 2 flights from Cade's rooms, down a narrow corridor that tries to talk you into turning back, past a storage alcove where someone gave up on a crate of old ledgers and made peace with dust. There's a low arch cut into the spine of the fortress. No banner, no lock, just a slab of stone worn smooth by hands that came here with questions they weren't brave enough to speak in public. Inside, the air is older, resin and vellum and the dry patience of paper. Shelves run wall to wall, fat with histories, treaties, ledgers, war songs, harvest counts. A narrow oculus in the ceiling drips a shaft of winter light into the room, like a blessing that forgot to warm. Candles live on chains that let you winch them down to strike, then send them back up to make the shadows behave. It's very quiet, the kind of quiet that lets your pulse pretend it's the only metronome in the world. Muriel was the one who told me about it, not directly. She'd accidentally left a list of records from the envoy days on Cade's desk, land grants, patrol logs, supply tallies, nothing with a heartbeat. Then raised one carefully ringed finger to the margin where a note, marked Repository C, had been scrawled in a hand that wasn't hers. If someone were to want facts rather than stories, she had murmured to the room, not to me. They might seek them where we keep the boring things. I took the hint. Wolves love being obvious and pretending it's cunning. Now I slide a candle down, coax it to life, and begin to read the boring things. Inventory of lantern oil, envoy quarter, week 40 to 44, armory requisitions, courtyard 3, delivery log, south gate. I'm looking for the shape of a knight, not the bang. Everyone knows the bang. I want the before, the quiet shuffling that makes boulders jump when you're not looking. Supply logs give you truth with a limp. Men lie, numbers don't bother. Here, oil deliveries doubled the day before the banquet. Here, replacement hinges ordered for the east stair door, then cancelled, then ordered again with expedite scrawled over top. Here, extra skins of lamp-black ink requisitioned for the scribe pool in our delegation's quarters. Our delegation, my house in this city, and a tiny neat signature on the requisition form, the one a clerk, adds to take responsibility if the ink spills and the old men shout, Asher. I feel the first hairline crack of understanding skitter along my ribs. I push it away. I keep reading. Messenger logs, cross courtyard, names, times, destinations, envoy runners to the council wing, to the kitchens, to the barracks. We sent 3 to the registry before the banquet. 1 was turned back because route closed. It wasn't. Someone simply didn't want him to arrive. The turned back messenger's note carries another signature. Approved by liaison, a Northwood. A Northwood, Asher. I swallow. The candlelight wobbles, as if the flame is breathing too fast. I flip backward 2 days. 4. A week. Asher's name shows up in all the right places. Dutiful, helpful, and then in places a liaison doesn't usually live. A requisition for extra scribe sand. A corridor closure that wasn't. A back staircase unlocked for air. A request for a runner at an hour our clerks should have been sleeping. Each stamped with his tidy initials as if guilt could be ironed flat. Careful, I hear Lyra in my head. When you tug on a thread, make sure it isn't your own nerve. I tug anyway. The ledger for the envoy quarters guest list is stacked on the next shelf, lazy as a cat. I pull it down, blow a skin of dust off, and open to the days around the banquet. Names line up. Diplomats, guards, servants permitted to enter for official functions. Then, in a different ink, the names of those granted temporary access by special writ. One writ reads, for work on the balcony ironwork. Inspection prior to evening performance. Fine, sensible. Approved by envoy security. Another reads, kitchen carriers for the southern table. To alleviate strain on staff. Also fine. Approved by domestic. The third reads, scribe assistant allowed backstage to deliver revisions to joint statement. Approved by liaison. The name of the assistant is nothing, just a first name that could be anyone, but the signature approving the exception is there again, neat as a blade. Asher. There are other names. Of course there are. Rot likes company. But in every place the door opens, someone I brought to this fortress is the hand turning the handle. The crack in my chest yields. It doesn't break clean. It scrapes as it widens, leaving hot lines behind. For a moment the room teeters, books leaning in like witnesses to a wedding that's decided to be a funeral instead. I press my hand to the ledger, as if weight will make facts be kinder. It doesn't. The stairs groan. Boots in the corridor. The quiet tells me who it is before the scent does. Found the boring things? Cade asks softly, stopping just inside the arch so the candlelight stripes his coat with gold. He's left his jacket on today, diplomacy sewn back onto his body like a duty he woke up willing to wear. His eyes are not dressed. They move over my face in a way, the way a man checks for wounds he expects to find. I found a lot of ink, I say, and my voice comes out smooth, which feels like treason to the parts of me that aren't. He steps closer. The oculus drops a cold halo onto the top of his head. He looks like a saint, carved by someone who didn't like saints. Mirael told you where to look. She left crumbs, I say. I'm not a fool. No, he says. You're not. Silence plucks its string between us. I set the ledger down because if I keep holding it, I'll throw it. I don't throw well when I'm shaking. It was one of ours, I say. And I don't mean the ink anymore. The words land like a stone. They don't bounce. Not yours. Mine. Cade doesn't soften. He doesn't lean. He lets the sentence sit between us like a hot iron. Yes. Say it, I demand. The taste in my mouth is copper and pride, and something that wants to be grief when it grows up. Say his name. His jaw works once. He's not avoiding the answer. He's choosing how sharp to make it. Asher. All the air in the room leaves at once and then comes caving back. I laugh. It's not kind. It's not sane. It's an animal noise my throat made because my heart couldn't decide between bite and run. He delivered the extra ink, I say. He opened doors that weren't meant to be open. He sent your runner the long way so the balcony men had time to set their toys. He signed forms because he likes being tidy. Yes. And he smiled at me, I say. And now I wish I hadn't slept, because the sleep made my voice human. And he asked me whether I wanted the joint statement draft filed, now or later, and he hung on my words like they were rope, and I stop because the names I want to use for myself taste worse than copper. Cade moves around the table to stand beside me, not facing me, just a shoulder's width. Away, close enough that patience smells like winter again, like the honest cut of cold. He didn't make you bleed, he says, quiet. He made you trust him. That's not better. It's worse, he says. I scrub the heel of my hand over my mouth, as if I can erase the memory of Asher's careful, eager smile with friction. I can't. The image burns, the pen suspended, the sweat under cologne, the small flinches he swore were respect, and I let pass for something like fear. Why? I ask, and the word is raw. Power, Cade says. Fear. Someone thought their future could be traded for your life, or for mine, or for a night that would make our elders crawl back to old positions and call it safety. His mouth hardens. Silas would use a knife if it were lying around. That doesn't mean he made it. You think it's him. I think he is opportunistic, Cade says. But the signature on those writs is Asher's. I hate that I want to defend. I hate the way my mind runs to excuses like a dog to a food bowl. He was scared. He was cornered. He didn't understand what he opened. He thought it would be, what? A stunt? A scare? Noise? Bodies without names? Blood that didn't include mine, because no one ever thinks the blood will include you until it does. I close the ledger with more force than necessary. The candle shakes and steadies. He's mine, I say. I brought him. You also brought Lyra, Cade says. Not to soothe, to weigh. You brought your spine. You brought better terms than our elders deserved. You brought a mouth that made Garrick consider the value of adjectives. You brought yourself. I brought a knife and set it on your table, I say. I like knives, he says. They make it easy to tell who's holding what. I turn on him because there's nowhere else to put my anger where it won't cut me instead. Is this where you say, now you see why I kidnapped you? Because I swear to every god with a calendar. Rescued, he says automatically. And then the automatic breaks. He doesn't step back, he steps in, anger lighting along the edge of his patience like oil catching. And yes. Now you see why I took you out. Because when the floor buckles, the easiest thing to do is blame the man you can reach. They would have reached you first, then they would have decided you begged for it. You're using my outrage to prove your point, I say. Laugh sharp enough to bloody my own lip. That's neat work. Stop, he snaps, and the word hits like a flat palm on a hot stove. I am not polishing you for an argument. What are you doing then? I wanted you to live. He doesn't shout. He doesn't have to. The sentence is a fist slammed through the paper of the room. The silence after it isn't pretty. It has edges, and they are all mine. Something ugly and soft starts up behind my ribs. It wants to forgive. It wants to go to its knees and lay its head on the word wanted. I hate it. I love it. I hate that I love it. You don't get to say that like it's a vow, I say, but the bite has less iron in it now. You don't get to pick me up like a sack and call it salvation and then say want. He inhales. The kind of inhale you take when you are about to do a thing that might cost you. I don't call it salvation, he says. I call it what it was. Ugly. Necessary. I'm not sorry. You should be. I am sorry for the parts that hurt you, he says. I am not sorry for keeping your heart beating. That's not your job. I made it mine, he says, sudden and low. For one night. I can hand it back, Noah. I'm not trying to keep it, but I won't lie about what I did. The library doesn't help. Books are cowards about this kind of moment. They smother their laughter in paper and look away. I press my palms to the edge of the table until the wood prints lines into my skin. He has to answer for it, I say. Asher. Not as a convenient villain you can parade to make your pack feel better about keeping me behind your walls. As mine. Cade looks at me then. Full on. The way you look at a cliff you mean to climb. Calculating. A little reverent of the height. Yours, he repeats. He was under my hand, I say. He used my authority to open doors that killed your men and nearly. I stop. Start again. He doesn't get to be swallowed by your story. He belongs to mine. I can give you that, Cade says. And it doesn't sound like charity. It sounds like logistics. We'll take him. We'll try him. But the charge list will start with your ink. Good, I say. And only then realize I'm breathing hard. Good. A beat passes. Then another. The anger that had my bones by the throat loosens its grip enough to let grief stick. Its hand up like a child who has a question and knows it will cry if it asks it. I'm angry at him, I say, surprising myself with the honesty as it leaves my mouth, and at me, and at how easy it is to take advantage of the parts of me that aren't teeth. Cade's hand moves and halts a breath from my forearm. He doesn't touch me. He lets the air do it. The parts of you that aren't teeth are not weaknesses, he says. They're the reason the teeth matter. I don't want to lecture about my soul. Good, he says. I don't have one prepared. I almost smile. The almost withers and becomes something more useful. How do we bring him in? I ask. Quietly, Cade says at once. The anger has retreated. The general arrives. Mirael will draft the writ. Garrick will make a plan with 2 lines. One assuming he runs, one assuming he pretends not to. We don't spread this. Not yet. I want Silas guessing wrong for 12 straight hours. And Lyra? We're still searching, he says. No body, no proof of leaving. That's not the worst combination. Never is. I'll tell you when we know, he says, and it's not a promise so much as a piece of architecture I can lean on. I nod. I don't trust my voice with her name again. He glances at the ledgers, the ink, the brittle little approvals Asher left like crumbs for wolves that know how to read. Muriel suspected, he says. She didn't know names. She knew where to send me to break, I say. She knew where to send you to get angry where the walls could hold it, he counters. She's better at triage than comfort. I noticed. He starts to step back, then doesn't. Noah, he says. When I said I wanted you to live, he says, eyes bright, as if the oculus had thrown light into them and asked it to stay. I didn't mean it like a title I'd pin on you or a leash I'd hold. I meant it like, he fumbles. It is like watching Winter try to decide if it should be spring for a sentence. Like the first fact, he finishes, and the relief in his mouth makes something I didn't know I was braced for ease. Everything else can be argued. I close my eyes on a laugh that isn't safe enough to be anything but mine. You are infuriating, I say. I nurture it. I open my eyes. I'm still angry at you. Good, he says. You argue better on a full temper. I breathe. The library breathes. Outside, the fortress shifts its weight like a dog settling into a different patch of floor. The candle gutters and catches, the flame doing what flames do, refusing to apologize for burning. Let's go write a very boring writ, I say, straightening. Let's, he agrees. We start down the narrow corridor together. At the arch, I pause. Cade. He stops. Yes. If you ever decide for me again, without the part where you give it back, I say, not turning, not softening, I will make your life a smaller room than this. His laugh is one exhale and real. Fair. We descend into the body of the fortress, into corridors that have the good manners to carry our steps without making opinions about them. The hidden library stays hidden behind us, keeping the ledgers and the quiet and the first fact of what we have to do. I'm still angry. At Asher. At myself. At the way the world keeps asking me to be a lever instead of a person. I'm also alive, and arguing, and heading toward a room where I can choose who carries my name and how. For now, that is enough. Night closes the fortress, like a fist. Snow frets at the window slit, a quiet hiss against stone. The candles in Cade's rooms burn lower than usual, trimmed to small, stubborn flames, the sort that refuse to dramatize. The air tastes like pine and iron and a little smoke. The map on his desk held down by the same river stone as last night. Our borders a quiet argument we keep having with history. We came back from the library with Muriel's writ and Garrick's plan hanging between us like a bridge built in a hurry, sound enough to cross, not pretty enough to stand and admire. We said too many practical things and not enough true ones. The fortress exhaled when we shut the door, as if the hallways had been holding its breath alongside us. Cade shrugs out of his coat and leaves it on the chair, precise even in carelessness. He doesn't light more candles. He doesn't move the map. He stands with his hands braced on the desk's edge and watches the flames work at their wicks like he's giving them room to change their minds. I signed it, I say, because we have to begin somewhere. Muriel will file it at dawn. Garrick's men will take Asher at the scribe's wing before second bell. Good, he says. A beat. I'm sorry. For what? I ask, specifically. For the day, he says. For the last hour. For the part where you had to see it in ink before you could let yourself believe it. For what comes next. He turns then. The patience in him is not a mask tonight. It's armor he's taken off and set somewhere close. His eyes have the tired brightness of someone who's been holding too much light for too long. I lean against the window ledge because I need something hard under me. You were right, I say, and the words taste like flint, about the danger, about me being a convenient blame, about pulling me out when the floor buckled. I didn't say that to hear. You were right, he says. I'm not saying it for you. I close my eyes long enough to smooth the heat out of my voice. He was mine to protect. And I missed him. You trusted him, Cade says, and his tone is kind without being soft. That's not a weakness. It is when I bleed for it. Then we stop the bleeding, he says. Then we stitch. I don't want triage metaphors. I mutter. Fine, he says. War metaphors? I open one eye and glare. Don't you dare. His mouth tips. Not enough to be called a smile, exactly enough to be called a reprieve. He pushes off the desk, and the distance between us shrinks to a problem we could solve if we were stupid, or brave, or both. Say the thing, I tell him, the one you swallowed in the library. He studies me for a heartbeat as if he can taste what the thing is made of. Then he crosses the room until the candles find new shadows on his face. I am not your jailer, he says, voice low as the snow. I'm your wall. You decide which side you stand on. I let the sentence enter me. It knows the way now. And if I decide to stand against you, his eyes catch mine, winter lit from below. Then I'll have to smile wider, wider, I say, even as my pulse drums yes. Say it again. Say it closer. Big enough to show teeth, he says simply. We leave that on the floor between us like a sword. Silence likes this room. It knows where to sit. It doesn't hide. I cross to the desk because otherwise I'll go to him, and I'm not ready to watch my feet agree to anything before my mouth does. The map looks up at me like every choice I've ever made. Cade doesn't follow. He waits, which is worse, or better, or both. You keep offering me doors, I say. I keep offering you choices, he says. Doors are just the visible kind. You're good at patience, I say. Infuriatingly. I practice, he says. On council days. On nights like this one, I touch the river stone. It is cold, and then it is less so. You called live the first fact. Yes, it isn't the only fact, I say. Not for me. Not tonight. I know. I am angry, I say, eyes on the borderlines. I know. he says again. And there's a warmth in it I don't deserve. And I don't like how much simpler the room feels when you're in it. He is quiet for a long, long heartbeat. When he speaks, it's careful. Simple isn't the same as easy. No, I say, surprised by the tremor in my voice. It's not. I look up. He's still there, not touching the space between us, not sweetening it either. Waiting. It is the most provocative thing he could do. What happens, I ask, if I decide to stay tonight? His jaw loosens and tightens, the only exterior sign of the interior struggle he will deny later. Then you stay. That's it? That's it. You won't take it, I say, and hang it on your wall like proof I belong to your story? I'll put it nowhere, he says. Except in my chest. I make a sound that could be laughter if laughter were a kind of swear. The candles bow, the flames show us our hands. His are open. Mine are clenched. I have been clenching them for years. Say the rest, I tell him. The part you're not saying. He gives me the grace of not pretending. Stay, he says, because you choose to. Stay because it's safer, and because you want to, and because you don't have to call it either to do it. And if I walk to the door, I'll open it, he says, and then I'll ask whether you'd rather argue with Garrick or with me. I always prefer a challenge, I say, and the corner of his mouth curves, and there it is. Heat under winter. Enough. If I keep circling, I will talk my courage to death. I step away from the map, away from the window, into the thrum. He doesn't reach for me. I come to him because I'm tired of being pulled by what hurts. I stop a breath away and look up. You keep calling patience a discipline, I say. It is, and restraint something you do on purpose. It is, so if I break off, sudden and stupidly shy, furious at it. If I start, you won't turn it into a cage. No, he says. I'll turn it into a door. Good, I say, and I take his face in my hands. His breath leaves him in a small, honest sound that goes right through me. My thumbs find the roughness of his jaw. His skin is warmer than the room. I tilt his head, not to own, just to ask. He answers by not moving at all, by letting me draw the line of his mouth with my mouth, by receiving rather than taking. The first kiss is not dramatic. It's precise. It's a simple truth offered twice. He is very still under my hands. And then, he isn't. Then the patience he's been practicing all this time shifts from restraint into attention, so intense it feels like weather breaking. He kisses me back like he's solving for X and has finally found it. Like everything before this was gathering data. He kisses me like a man who promised himself not to risk, and then found the risk had already been taken. My knees decide to outsource their responsibilities to the rest of me. He senses it, and does not move his hands to my waist, does not press, does not turn the angle into possession. He waits. The infuriating man, the wonderful man. You're going to make me do all the work, I mutter against his mouth. You started the job, he says, voice hoarse. I trust your management. I laugh into his kiss, which turns it to heat. I step closer on purpose now, closing the last useful inch. The contact is a line of lightning drawn with a sure hand, shoulder to chest, hip to hip. The heat of his breath, a new territory I hadn't planned to claim and have no intention of surrendering. When I slide my hands down to his throat, I feel his pulse, steady then not, and I feel a mean, glorious satisfaction at the evidence that I am not the only one undone. Take off your patience, I whisper. He exhales something that might be my name and might be a promise. Then he does as he's told, not in a rush, not in an alpha's grabbing show. He lets restraint unbutton itself. His hands lift, hover, and meet me at my ribs. A question written with heat. Here? I answer by leaning into his palms. His fingers spread like anchors set, like the kind of possession that's permission first, grip second. We orbit the bed without looking at it. We knock into the desk and don't care. The river stone rolls and settles with a sound like a heartbeat outside the body. He kisses the side of my mouth as if he's cataloging angles. He kisses the corner of my jaw as if it owes him an apology for existing. He kisses my throat like he's been patient long enough. Tell me to stop, he murmurs there. Keep going, I say. He makes a sound that is not polite. I like it. I like too much. I decide to be reckless about liking. Clothes become suggestions. Candlelight decides it prefers skin. I don't let him pace me. I take pace away and hand it back and take it again. A tug of war played smiling. He is hungry like a predator that has learned table manners and chooses to forget them with me. I am demanding like an Omega, with no interest in the script he was given. Between us, the night learns new grammar. Yours, mine, ours, right now. He lifts me with his mouth still on mine, and I have the brief and ridiculous thought that I am going to be annoyed at him for being this strong later. He sets me down on the bed as if placing a blade where it belongs. I pull him with me because gravity is for cowards. When he braces over me, he waits again, and the waiting is its own kind of touch. I am not your jailer, he says, close enough that I feel the words. Say stop, say go, say nothing. I will listen. I am not your prize, I say, pulling him down. I am your problem. Perfect, he says into my mouth. I love problems. What a romantic, I manage. And then there isn't room for talking. The passion is a fight we both win. He meets me with heat and humor, with the kind of respect that has teeth. I meet him with hands that learn him fast, with a mouth that refuses to be quiet, with a spine that refuses to bend unless bending is what I want. He calls me Noah in a voice unused to pleading. I tell him to shut up in a voice unused to kindness. We both laugh. We both break. We both come back to the same place. Here. There is a moment, a bright, wordless crest, where everything I hate about doors and cages becomes irrelevant. Where the only architecture that matters is the one we're building with breath and insistence, and the clean math of yes. There is a moment where I think, oh, so that's what alive means when it isn't being practical. And then there is the long, sure slide back into bodies that remember us. We don't rush the after. He doesn't bolt for distance. I don't bolt for jokes. He rolls to his side and props himself on an elbow and looks at me like he is memorizing something he intends to keep. You're dangerous, he says, and it isn't praise or warning. It's a truth he clearly enjoys. I told you, I say, trying to control my lungs with dignity. I'm a problem. You're my problem, he says, unabashed. Careful, I warn, because words like that are hooks if you don't hold them right. I am, he says, very solemn. I am careful. I test that. I take his hand and guide it, slow, and he follows with reverence rather than greed. When I turn my face to kiss his wrist, the pulse there stumbles, and he laughs softly like the sound surprised him on the way out. I didn't plan this, I say into the small private air, a confession I wouldn't make if I had anywhere else to put it. I did, he says, and when my head snaps up, he catches my expression and adds, not the how, the hope. Ah, I make a face to hide the way my ribs loosen dangerously, optimistic for a man who enjoys worst-case scenarios. I enjoy them because they make room for this, he says. Do you regret it? I consider the ceiling. The candlelight is doing its quiet work, making the plaster into maps. I feel the ache in the parts of me that have missed being wanted like this. I feel the anger coiled in me, not gone, never gone, but soothed into a shape that doesn't cut me when I move. I feel our breath trying not to synchronize, and then giving up. No, I say. Ask me again tomorrow. I might be contrary on principle. I would be disappointed if you weren't. We lie there, the fortress a slow animal settling around us. The snow talks at the window, the fire replies. Somewhere in the hall, Garrick shifts in his chair like a boulder, remembering it is technically a man. Somewhere else, Muriel sharpens a sentence on both edges. Tomorrow, a writ will go out, and a man I trusted will learn what his name weighs. Tonight, I keep choosing. Cade, I say into the small dark. If I stand against you, you'll smile wider, but you'll still open the door. Yes, and if I stand with you? I'll move the wall, he says, so you can see more, always so modest. I nurture it. I huff a laugh that turns into a yawn I pretend is tactical. His hand strokes my shoulder once, slow, like you would calm a hawk who consented to be still for a minute. It's intimate, and ridiculous, and exactly what I didn't know I needed. Tell me something true, I say, because sleep is a door, and I like walking through the difficult kind. He is quiet long enough that I think he might give me the tired version. Then, when you stood in our council and took a bite out of Silas with a sentence, I wanted to clap. I snort. That's treason. I know, he says, pleased. Your turn. I wanted to kiss you in the hallway after the first adjournment, I say. When you said myths grow because people enjoy them. His grin is sharp and secret. You should have. I'm doing it now, I say. And do. Later. Minutes, hours, the night is bad at clocks. We end up half-twined, one of his legs heavy over mine, one of my hands trapped under his ribs. The bed remembers us. The room does the indecent thing and warms. I feel sleep at the edges, a patient animal that will come if I stop trying to call it. Tomorrow, I say, because I am who I am, we take him. We don't make it theater. No, he says, just justice. And after, he says, we make the elders choke on a treaty they didn't expect to survive the night. I close my eyes. You really do enjoy problems. Yours most of all, he says. Don't get used to me agreeing with you, I warn. Already drifting. It will make you soft. I've been accused of many things, he murmurs into my hair. Never that. I feel the smile against my skin. I decide, in a deeply unwise and remarkably content corner of myself, that, if he ever is soft, it will be my fault, and I will be insufferably proud. As sleep finally drags me under, I think of doors and walls and the ridiculous, infuriating fact that sometimes the safest place to stand is exactly where the enemy makes room. I think of Asher's signature, neat as a wound. I think of Lyra's mouth, sharp as a prayer. I think of the smell of scorched pine that has become a way to find my breath. I wake once, later, to the sensation of being watched, not in danger, accounted for. I open my eyes to find Cade awake, propped again on his elbow, studying my face like it's a map he trusts more than the paper. What? I grumble. Nothing, he says. Just arguing with myself. Who's winning? You are, he says. As usual. I close my eyes. Good. Go to sleep. Tomorrow I'll give you new problems. He lowers himself. Laugh quiet. I look forward to it. When morning begins to think about existing. The candles have died brave, and the window is pale as a held breath. The fortress shifts. The day will make us pay for every yes we spoke tonight. Let it. I chose. He listened. We built something with teeth and gentleness in the same mouth. I can work with that. Morning makes the fortress honest. No candlelight to soften corners. No snow sigh on stone to forgive sharp edges. Just hard daylight poured through the high slits of the council chamber, finding dust and truth with the same blunt grace. The resin logs in the central pit burn clean, their smoke thinner than last night's, almost polite. Wolves fill the tiers in rings of gray and black and old green, elders, captains, scribes, faces sharpened by sleep's poor cousin, duty. I walk in on my own feet. Garrick's scowl tracks me from the door like a sun that only shines on problems. Muriel is already at her place, jewelry immaculate, a paper she doesn't need angled to catch light just so. Silas leans on one knee against the stone bench, the picture of an alpha too controlled to pace, which is how you know he wants to. Around the circle, the murmur rolls and settles, a tide waiting to see what the fish will do. I don't try to hide the marks on my throat. I don't bear them like a banner either. Provocations are more fun when they pretend to be accidents. My collar sits low enough to fail at discretion. The bruised crescents are not lurid. They're just honest, the way morning is honest. A ripple moves the chamber. It's faint. Shock in one quarter, amusement in another, pique in a third. Lyra would have enjoyed this opera. I file that thought in the pocket where I store reasons to keep breathing. Cade follows me in as if we'd rehearsed the distance, close enough to count as beside, far enough to count as separate. He wears the envoy coat today, sleeves straight, buttons fastened. His eyes are bare. Elric tries and fails not to bounce in place near the side door where runners wait to be told the shape of the next hour. Garrick plants himself at Cade's shoulder like a rumor that turned out to be true. Muriel's mouth thins into something that isn't quite a frown. It's the expression you make when your favorite blade comes back sharper than you sent it out. Silas sees the marks and goes very still. The stillness is not shock. It's math. He runs 10 scenarios and discards 8. I would pay to know the remaining 2. The first elder clears her throat. Ambassador Cade. Representative Noah. Her eyes flick to my neck and back like a sparrow trying not to look at an apple. We convene to address the terms tabled last night and the disruptions of the same. Cade inclines his head. We are ready. I don't. I meet the room with my chin where it belongs. I didn't come here to be ready. I came to be Noah. Before we get to clauses, Silas says smoothly, let us address the spectacle. He doesn't point. He doesn't need to. The room knows how to read. Spectacle? I say, bright as polished steel. You'll have to be more specific. There were so many. A quick scatter of laughter, rude, relieved. Garrick almost smiles and then remembers his brand. Muriel looks like she's inhaling a lemon. Silas ignores them. He speaks to the elders, but he uses my marks as punctuation. Our envoy brought an enemy Omega into our fortress. Our envoy's Omega now arrives at council wearing commentary. We are asked, I suppose, to mistake this for policy. Careful, I say pleasantly. You almost sounded like you cared about my neck. I care about optics, he says. I care about precedent. I care about the line between private appetite and public risk. Then frame it correctly, I say. This is not an ornament. It is an argument. One. A bigger ripple this time. Someone on the third tier coughs laughter into a fist and pretends it was dust. Elric lights up like a lantern and then dims under Garrick's look. Muriel's rings go still. You can tell she's thinking when she stops fidgeting. Silas doesn't blink. Do you intend, he asks Cade, to present him as a hostage, as a guarantee, or as a husband? Tell me the costume so I know which law to consult. Cade's patience moves like a tide. He steps forward 1 pace, loose at the wrists, voice the iron that has decided not to be a blade today. He is none of those, he says. He made a choice. The words land and spread, a slow bloom in the cold. The elders know a vow when they hear one. Some of them hate vows on principle. Some of them miss making them. The room leans in, the way it did when we argued over the ridge clause and the oil. Logs and the simple question of whether living was a first fact or a footnote. Silas's lip curls. Choice, he says. A convenient word when a man's teeth are in your throat. I feel heat climb my chest. Before Cade can speak, I do. If you think I'm a quiet necklace, I say to the chamber, you have not been listening. I don't raise my voice. I don't need to. The morning does the work, bouncing sound off stone and shoulders and pride. I take 1 step, just one, into the open circle and let them see the ridiculous man I am. A mouth with legs, a spine with jokes, a lever who refuses to be anyone's hands but his own. I did not come here to be redeemed by your good opinion, I say. I did not come here to soothe your bruised idea of what an Omega is for. I came here to keep 2 packs from turning the Frostline into a graveyard again. I came here because your envoy proved last night that when the floor breaks, he can carry more than patience. I came here because I am very good at arguments, and this one is worth winning. Silas says nothing. Muriel inhales, slow and thin. Garrick rumbles something approving under his breath that he will deny later. Elric looks like he wants to applaud with his whole body. You want to talk precedent? I go on. Let's talk. Precedent says 2 packs bury their sons and then meet to negotiate how to bury them slower next time. Precedent says Omegas pour tea and lower eyes and speak only when another mouth is full. Precedent says we pretend knives are pens until they're not. I tip my chin to the pit, to the resin fire that refuses to make smoke an alibi. Here is new precedent. I stand with my throat honest. He stands with his patience honest. We write a treaty with both. A murmur ripples and doesn't settle. It's not approval. Not yet. It's a room remembering how to think. Muriel finds her voice first, bright with frost. And when your honesty costs us? When the other side decides this spectacle means our envoy is compromised? When your marks become their leverage and our law becomes your mouth, then your law needs sharper teeth, I say, and the wolfish joy of throwing. Good words at the right walls makes me crueler than I mean to be, and I am happy to lend it mine. She opens her mouth, and I brace for the cut, but Cade lifts a palm, small and final. Miriel, he says, even. We aren't asking the chamber to revise the code this morning. We are asking for a vote on the Ridge Clause trial period, the Mills concession, and the enforcement language as amended. And what do you call this? Silas demands, pointing at me without pointing, at the space where my throat is a paragraph. A fact, Cade says, not a clause. Silas's eyes narrow. Or a distraction, useful when you can't sell your concessions sober. Try me, Cade says. He turns to the elders and lays out terms like a general setting a line. The joint patrols with thresholds and exit ramps, the barter on mill access, the press statement, the enforcement language I demanded with the last of my breath yesterday. He does it without drama, without apology, and without hiding me behind a polite word. Every time someone tries to drag us into the private, he steers us back to the public with ruthless grace. It should feel like being handled. It doesn't. It feels like being partnered. I hate that my body knows the word before my pride does. The debate chews the hour. Garrick stands like furniture that would rather be a fist. Miriel slices with sentences whose edges gleam. I respect the craft, even as I bleed at the idea of crossing her. Silas plays patient man's chess, slow pieces, long arcs, small traps, and when that fails to keep the board in his control, he drags us toward process like a drowning man pulling a boat down with him. Through it all, Cade keeps the argument clean. When the moment sagged, he lifted it. When the room tried to turn me into a banner or a bruise, he redirected. Terms, not throats. Treaty, not gossip. He didn't whiten the marks with a glance at my collar. He didn't use them either. He let them be morning, hard, silly, true. When the vote comes, the room holds its breath the way you do when you blow on embers and pretend you don't care whether the flame agrees. By the code, the first elder intones, a trial of the Ridge Patrol clause with enforcement language. As amended, the Mills concession in parallel and a joint press statement. All in favor? Hands rise. Not all. Enough. The old wolves count. Their faces settle into the expression of men and women who have chosen a cut and will now justify the scar. Elric, Garrick mutters, stop bouncing. I'm not. Elric whispers, vibrating. Miriel lets the smallest breath escape, disappointed and not. Silas's jaw doesn't move. His eyes do a lot. Cade inclines his head, once. Thank you, he says to the council. We'll draft. The elders begin the low, efficient churn of after, scribes summoned, language to review, signatures to plan. The ring loosens. The chamber's tide begins to go out. Silas stays. He looks at me like a problem he has decided to solve with a different math. Enjoy your victory, envoy, he says, slick as oil. Watch the cliff. Cliffs are excellent, I say sweetly. They make cowards honest. His gaze flicks to my throat, and then lower, where my hands rest easy at my sides. He smiles without joy. You don't frighten me, little knife. I smile back, all teeth. You don't have to be frightened. You only have to be wrong. Silas, Cade says, just short of warning. Walk carefully. For once, Silas says, I intend to. He leaves with the measured stride of a man who cultivates patience, only because outright violence would be embarrassing before lunch. Garrick watches him go with the affection of a man judging the load-bearing capacity of a bridge he intends to break later. Miriel's eyes track two directions at once, the door Silas used and the press of aides converging on Cade. Elric edges toward me, barely containing a sound like a kept cheer. Don't, Garrick says without looking. I didn't, Elric says, which is technically true. Cade turns to the chamber at large and says, calmly, he made a choice. The room hears it as closing argument and as warning. The ones who hate me hear threat. The ones who tolerate me hear boundary. The ones who will come around later hear invitation. I grin because the impulse is irrepressible. If you think I'll be a quiet ornament, I tell the tears. You're very bad at reading. That does it. The laughter comes like pressure released. Not all of it kind, not all of it cruel. Garrick's chest rumbles. Miriel rolls her eyes straight to heaven, where the gods carefully adjust their rings. Elric beams, sanctified. Cade's mouth curves. The patience in him changes temperature. Winter in sunlight. He steps to me, not crowding, not gentle for witnesses, honest for mourning. You can go, he says, soft enough that it only carries because the room wants to hear it. You can leave this chamber, this quarter, this fortress. You can take a runner, or walk, or make me open the door and watch you not look back. My chest goes tight and wide at once. He's doing it again, laying the choice in the open where it can't be prettied into anything else. And, he adds, a confessional smile that would get lesser men forgiven for worse sins. I'll still find you. It's ridiculous how much the line lands. It's infuriating how much of me stands up to it. Try to keep up, I say, bright as brass, and turn as if to go. The chamber makes noise. Not outrage, not quite. The music of 100 wolves trying to decide whether they're scandalized or entertained. Garrick mutters something that sounds like a prayer for patience and a curse for stares. Miriel sighs as if beauty has been wasted on comedy. Elric fails not to clap once, exactly once, and then hides his hands like contraband. I pivot back on my heel, cocked eyebrow. Well? Are you going to let me storm out with dignity? Or are you going to insist on escorting me like a gentleman who can't resist stealing another minute? Cade doesn't give the room the theater of a bow. He just walks, unhurried, to meet me at the mouth of the aisle. And the two of us leave the circle together, neither in front of the other, past scribes, who pretend to be invisible and guards who fail, down the steps washed, in mourning, into the corridor that smells like stone and new arguments. We make it 3 doorways before we stop pretending we're going somewhere else. The hall is empty, except for the memory of Garrick's chair and the echo of our boots. Cade turns me with a hand low at my back. Not claiming, guiding. I let him. He leans in just enough that only the stones can gossip. You're impossible, he says, low, delighted. We got the ridge and the mills and your enforcement language, and your first instinct is to make a speech about your neck. My neck makes excellent speeches, I say. Besides, we needed the elders to remember the treaty is written on bodies, not just paper. He studies my mouth like it might be a footnote. You realize Silas is going to make a move. I realize he already did, I say. Today he traded thunder for erosion. Tomorrow he'll try weather. We'll bring umbrellas. We, he repeats, the sound a small admission that tastes like a larger one. Come eat before Garrick decides soup is treason. I should say I have work. I should say I'm going to the scribe wing to be there when Asher hears his name read out loud. I should be difficult for the sake of staying sharp. Lead, I say, because I enjoy contradicting myself when it makes arrogant men blink. He doesn't blink. He smiles the way he promised. Wider. Teeth loyal to their owner. Tame for exactly one person. We walk. Elric peels off a hallway to bounce beside us, trying to contain 10 questions and failing only 9. Miriel intercepts with a list of words as sharp as a rack of knives, and the hint of a smirk she will deny before lunch. Garrick looms, counts exits, pronounces my collar irresponsible, and then escorts us anyway. The fortress watches, and the morning keeps being honest. At the turn to the envoy quarter, I tip my head toward Cade. For the record, I say, if you start telling me how to breathe, I'll make your life a smaller room than this corridor. For the record, he says, equally mild. If you stop arguing, I'll call a physician. Threats already, I say. Promises, he corrects. We reach the door where night began and today will end, and I feel it again, the electric silly truth of what we started. Not a flag, not a chain. A choice laid down like a sword between us, each of us with a hand on the hilt. Go on then, I tell him. As the runner skids up with news, we'll pretend we didn't hear early. Open it. He does. Of course he does. I step through, then pause with one hand on the frame, turning back just enough so the light catches the bruises with either dignity or indecency. It's hard to tell. Cade stops because he's trained for ambushes and invitations both. New war, I say. Not between packs. Between, he prompts, indulgent. Our stubbornness, I say. Yours and mine. He doesn't argue. He just looks at me like a man who believes he can win a fight by letting it be fun. May it be long, he says. May it be loud, I say. May it never be boring, he says. Not with me here, I say. And go inside to eat soup that is still too salty and exactly right, to sign papers that will make old wolves curse and younger ones breathe easier, to be present when a clerk's neat signature is read into a quiet room, and a different kind of honesty is required, to start a day that will prove morning's promise and test its mercy. Behind me, Cade follows. Not ahead, not behind. Beside, the world will keep asking us for bigger wars. Let it. We have ours. And we're smiling wider.